and the goal was to bring you your next favorite band.
Sweet, that intro is my new favorite band. That's phenomenal. I'm so excited to be on.
Yeah. I heard a rumor that you might be able to play that song live today.
You heard correctly. Yes.
Excellent. So,
good enough for rock.
I don't know when I rock out here on your next favorite band show.
and listen, it's going to be everybody's favorite band.
Phil, you weren't supposed to make me get all... God almighty,
But this
Phil.
is why we do it.
Like, seriously. I gotta gather myself. All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Welcome to your next favorite band. That's both the show title and our promise to you. We here at Stereophilia Studio are tireless in our pursuit of finding incredible, genre-defiant artists who are either a hot up-and-coming band or a group that has been delivering for years but have flown under the radar.
Tonight, we spend time talking about the Philly Music Fest with founder and producer of the event, Greg Seltzer.
Each month, we will bring you live streams, audio podcasts, and perhaps even a live concert where you can listen to the stories and hear the music of artists personally curated by us based on what we feel will be worthy of your time. Be sure to subscribe and tune in to each episode because the possibilities are endless and you never know who will be
Your next favorite band.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Philip Reese.
And I am along for the ride. Hello, everyone. It's me, Dan Drago from 25 O'Clock.
And you are listening to...
Your next favorite band.
And today, it'll be your next favorite fest.
Yes.
As we, appropriately so, spend some time on this very special event that Philadelphia puts on every year.
Yes, we will be,
With the founder and producer of it. So super honored for that.
Yes, I'm excited.
So we will bring on Greg here in a few minutes, but to start things off, wanted to kind of share, as we do, we often share a little piece of trivia or what have you. Came across this on the internet. I wish I had it for real, but Dan, I think you're going to enjoy this. This is I guess like a event sheet from the Spectrum.
It looks like in the mid or late 70s.
That's exactly right. Because check this out, like Marshall Tucker Band was playing on Friday, June 18th, $5.50 in advance, $6.50 day of show.
Oh man, ZZ Top and Blue Oyster Cult. I would enjoy that.
Yeah, and Ted Nugent.
Ted, well, you know what? Say what you about the man is politics, and I don't love him, but man can rip a guitar.
Absolutely.
So, and also it looks like he's the warm-up act, so he's probably playing for as little time as possible.
Some of the other ones on here,
Neil Young and Stephen Stills band,
right?
Which is great. I love Stephen Stills. I think he is my favorite of the CSN grouping right there. Earth, Wind, and Fire.
How about Elton John for $9.50?
Why not?
Exactly.
Fleetwood Mac and New Riders of the Purple Sage, which is also a fascinating combination, right there. Two fairly different sounding bands, but that was the 70s, man. Like they just put whoever on together.
Seals and Crofts, Jethro Tull, and then rounding out, this must have been just like the June, July sheet of paper. Eagles. The Eagles are playing.
Eagles. Wow. What a time at the Spectrum.
So pretty amazing. And one of the reasons why I bring this up is in the research of learning how Greg Seltzer came to be such a music lover. It was a show he saw at the Spectrum. It wasn't any of these bands, and it wasn't the 70s either. But it was a little piece of trivia for him, and I thought this was a nice bridge over there. So looking forward to hear more about his experience at the Spectrum.
Yeah.
As the kind of his origin story of being a giant, music lover, music nerd, in a good way. But one other topic I wanted to talk about, and this transitioned us nicely, is first and foremost, Dan, congratulations. This is around the time that you're getting to your anniversary of your show.
Yeah. We're
10
about
years.
We're about there. We're about like, so there is like a day, and then I've just sort of treated the rest of the year as sort of the 10th anniversary season.
Sure. Why not?
Because you only get one. So
Right.
it's like people who celebrate their birthday for like a week straight or a month straight. I know people who do that, but
The
it's
show
like,
is different too in that, because I struggle with this too. It's like, well, was it when I had the idea? Was it when we put the website up? Was it that first episode? Like, which one do you really use? So I'm with you. You can use a season for this.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of like the first taping I did would have been in mid-September of
Sure.
2014.
Right.
And then like a few subsequent tapings after that. I think I taped maybe 2 or 3 episodes after that. Never again would I be that far ahead. And
There's nothing like the early years.
yeah, and I started putting it together kind of mid-October of 2014. I remember cutting the like principal intro outro production. I remember cutting that in my aunt and uncle's basement in Highlands Ranch, which is a suburb of a southern suburb of Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
Because that just happened to be where I was at the time, and I had my laptop and my little iMic. Which I might still have. No, it's not easily accessible, or else I could pull it out. But
That's amazing.
and that was when I did it, because I was just like, well, I also didn't understand how to like bank production and episodes, and
Sure.
I was using a different. I wasn't using the same service that I use now, so it was tricky. It's amazing what you learn in 10 years doing the same thing over and over again. You get better at it.
Absolutely. So again, congrats on 10 years, over 300 episodes now. That was
Yep.
earlier this year.
Yeah, 336 is this week.
Totally dedicated to the Philadelphia music scene. So either artists or supporting people, organizations, perhaps some surrounding, but for the most part, it's Philly cats the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's admirable in and of itself. And then you've decided to do this thing. Obviously, when we do music podcasts, as you and I both do, one of the things we love is when an artist agrees to play live on the show.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, me too. And so you took the recordings that came out, some of your favorite ones, bundled them together, and it's in support of Philly Music Fest. So let's talk about that. While you're chatting, I'm going to bring up your site and also the Bandcamp page so people can go support this.
So it's called "Want to Play a Song." Live on 25 o'clock, volume 1. Yep,
so this
there
is
it is.
Your site, the 25o'clockpod.com.
Yeah,
and when you
yeah.
click on available now, it brings you here to Bandcamp.
Yep, it's exclusively available through Bandcamp. It's not on the streaming services or anything like that. I did that on purpose because when you get into the streaming services and stuff like that, suddenly your return of your return on a compilation is much less, and I needed to maximize the amount of money that this compilation could make. And that's not for me, that's not just to put it in my pocket. I wanted to maximize the amount of money because I'm going to give every cent that this compilation makes, I'm going to turn it over to the cats at Philly Music Fest to go along with their charitable giving that they will do at the end of this festival. They've given tons and tons of money out into the community throughout the years of its of the existence of the festival.
Absolutely.
And I've wanted to do a compilation for a long time. I just thought it was a cool idea, and it kind of coincides with the 10-year anniversary, and I could make it coincide with the fest as well. I've been supporters of this fest for a long time.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, time to do even more for it than I've done in the past. I've always shilled for them, and
And important to note, it's a $10 suggested. People can go up from that, knowing that it's purely a donation to this great organization and the great things they do, which we'll get into that in a little bit with Greg. But if you don't mind, maybe quickly touch on a few of the actual tracks that are on there, because there's probably a cool story or two there.
Oh, sure. There's people on here who have been part of the festival in previous years. There's track 4 right there, Mustafa Numbisi doing a performance of his song Stumble. We recorded that in promotion of, so it would have been about a year ago right now. I can't remember if it was in promotion of Exponential Fest or Philly Music Fest, because he was on the list for both that year.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, he didn't get to play Exponential that year because of weather issues. But he did play Philly Music Fest at Milk Boy last year.
Right.
And that was a great performance right there.
Sure.
Just like literally, like you're all looking at me in the little corner right here, literally behind me right now.
Right.
On that amp with that guitar, I think too. I don't think he had his own electric guitar, so I just gave him mine.
I'll bring that
Yeah, there it is. It's there. Sorry, it's there. And then on that little Fender amp,
Beautiful.
as well. Just one mic on the amp, one mic on Mustafa, and away we went.
And we should also point out every single one of those was part of an interview. That it's
Mhm.
often you say the phrase "want to play a song" at the end,
Yeah.
and so that's where that comes from. And so if people are digging a track, they can actually then search that episode and get
Yep.
to know more of that musician.
Yeah, you can hear
and your time
the
spent
whole
with them.
interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I always like to put it at the end.
Sure.
Occasionally people like to do them first. Every once in a while, I get someone who comes in and is like, "Can I just do it first so I
yeah.
can?" And I go, "Sure." And
Mhm.
so typically in those episodes, I don't like try and like fool you with production later by tagging it at the end and
Oh,
like,
that's
"Oh,
funny.
let's pretend you're about to do it." I just stick it at the beginning.
Oh, I definitely put
Yeah.
it where I want it to be.
Yeah, I had a couple episodes ago. I had the band, their emo punk band called Brackish, come
Mhm.
in, and they had like rehearsed like an acoustic version of these songs because
Oh,
like
fun.
they don't normally play like that. And they came in and asked the same thing. They're like, "Can we go first?" And I was like, "Cool." So I stuck one at the beginning, and then we segue into the conversation, and then I throw another one at the end because
That's
they really
cool.
did an excellent job. Like
Yeah.
I would it's tricky for some bands. They can kind of get in their own head about how to do that because they're used to performing with a band or used
Mhm.
to performing under certain circumstances. And I certainly never spring it on them, but it's something to just sit there with your instrument and your voice and just do it like that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And as people know who watch this show, love when people play, especially these like unique acoustic versions. So Brackish might be on a future volume 2 of Want to Play a Song.
Who knows? I got
Exactly.
more. It goes
That's
back
right.
10 years.
Exactly. There's tons of catalog there.
I had
Um,
I had originally like a much larger list of probably like 30
I'm
or
sure it was very
40
hard to
performances.
curate that.
Uh, I I was able to do it by sort of like making rules where I was like,
Sure.
okay, especially on this first one, I was like, I want it to be bands that are still like people who are still active out
Yeah.
there, because I wanted someone to like maybe hear someone like Mustafa or Suge Daniels or something like that
Yep.
on the compilation, just be like, I've never heard of this person. Let me go to their
Yes.
internet world and then be like, oh, they tour, they have records, they're on the big green app and all that. So
Love it.
yeah, so I want people to have a landing site. In the future, I very likely might go into artists that aren't as active anymore or
Sure.
who helm different projects now because, they were there and it's great performances. And
And
I don't
again, they always have the interview to go back to.
Yeah.
So there's
I
that
don't-
connection to it.
Yeah, I don't mess with the recordings too much. It's just very, very minimal post production without getting too deep into it. It's just a little bit of tweaking here and there.
Sure.
But what
But
you
it's nice
hear,
and genuine and
what you
authentic.
hear is what it sounded like to be in this room, and that's always what I'm shooting for. So if
Absolutely.
you hear a chair creak or you hear, something bump something, or
It's in there.
yeah, it's in there. It's
Yeah.
all part of it.
I love that stuff. So again, congrats on 10 years, 300 plus episodes, and also definitely admire what you're doing there, raising some extra money for Philly Music Fest and all the great things they do. So let's pivot to Philly Music Fest and Greg Seltzer. What we wanted to do to transition in here is they posted a very cool video on their Instagram page. So we're going to bring that up here, and then we'll bring Greg on the show. Here it is. So there is info about the Philly Music Fest and all the great things too. And here, welcome to the show, founder and music producer, Greg Seltzer.
Hey, I love that song. Still
I
love
know.
that song. Every time I hear it, I love it.
That's so cool. So cool. And what a great, I mean, like, there's so much to get into here around this festival. But I thought before we get to that, let's talk about you and your background because it's an interesting journey of itself, and it's probably one that maybe wouldn't be expecting. That it's this person who is, like for me, I'm this like insurance geek, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and then I'm this music lover, around that. And so not the same but similar is you're actually like a M&A lawyer by trade, who then has this other music stuff. So if you don't mind, let's get a little bit back into your kind of even upbringing before we get to kind of college and such. I had shared earlier on that kind of like it's from the 1970s, a listing of bands that were performing at the Spectrum, because I had seen and heard that was one of the like your kind of like awakening moments on the power of music was a Grateful Dead show at the Spectrum.
Absolutely, yeah. If we have to talk about me, we'll do it, Phil. But as long as we're talking about the Spectrum, that'll help me through it. But before we go into the career stuff, yeah, I mean, my first show ever was at the Spectrum, and I don't mean my first, rock show. I mean my first ever concert, which was Neil Diamond in 1984 when I was 8 years old and went with my mother. And it was, I didn't know what was going on, but it was the America tour, and he had a huge flag in the back, which I remember, and I really do remember that vision alone, but I don't remember anything about the Spectrum. And then flash forward, my first Dead show was September 10th, 1993.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fairly unremarkable show at the Spectrum, although the following night, I believe they played a Dark Star, which was kind of hard to catch in 1993.
Sure.
So that was kind of my first foray into like real concerts at the Spectrum. It was completely formative. And then I tried to go see the Jerry Band at the Spectrum that November after seeing the Dead. Didn't know how to get a ticket, ended up just hanging in the parking lot. But, that's an experience unto itself. So after that, Phil, the journey was, I was on the journey from that point on.
That is so cool. It is so neat to get into so I don't play any instruments. I don't know if you do, but Dan was a musician and a podcast host. But a lot of times that people are always saying like, how do you not play an instrument? And it's just like, I don't know, just never happened for me. But that where someone's brain just gets turned on to just have a very emotional response to music and how it can, help you out of a dark time or just simply add an atmosphere to a certain experience, like say, Thanksgiving or something like that. Like it just amplifies such an emotional response and memories that it's just a different kind of experience for some people over others. And, clearly that's, something for yourself as well.
Yeah. And I didn't start with the Grateful Dead. My first CD was the Joshua Tree.
Nice.
I'm right in that wheelhouse. REM, U2.
It's better than mine was Debbie Gibson, so that's a better place to start. I was from Long Island, so that's
It's sort of compulsory.
Yes, exactly.
Listen, man. I leaned into the Immaculate Collection quite a bit, which is a fancy way of saying Madonna's greatest hits.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I love all that stuff. I love pop music, and then I kind of got around some people at a camp I went to. And they were pretty much, stop listening to Immaculate Collection and start listening to One from the Vault. And then from there, it was kind of on the Grateful Dead train.
Yeah. But there is always, again, like it's either concerts or even just songs come out and your brain just starts to say, I want something more than pop music. And then you really go down these different rabbit holes. And so those are always fun to kind of chat about, which moments changed your ears forever. I just love that stuff. But
Yep.
Another thing I had read about, and this is, a little bit, kind of similar, tangential, but like I remember reading again, since, I'm doing research on a person who has a Philly Music Fest, but also has this lawyer career. Some of the stuff I'm finding was more like this, and I found this interesting too, is like that you always studied or did work with music on, and that was the way I was too. But you get into these like group projects, and other people are like needing dead silence, and it's like I can't work in silence, and they couldn't work with sound, and it's like again the different ways that you kind of focus But
It's interesting. I started my career before law in accounting.
Yeah.
And very, very nerdy in the accounting. And that was at undergrad, and then working at a big accounting firm after graduating Penn State. But when I was doing work in the accounting field, I could listen to music with words, no problem. And I always would listen to music with words. But then when I went back to law school, you're focusing more on words and reading more. And I kind of went to non-words, so more jazz, instrumental stuff. So but I'm always listening to something. Something is always on in the background, going to sleep, whatever. It's always on. But I did make the switch. Yeah.
You said something that I always say too, like and this will get us into another topic I want to talk about, but where like vocals is just another instrument, and that's the way I always look at it too. Now, I then also say I don't necessarily lyrics are last for me, and that's a kind of a hot take that I have that most people don't agree with. But for me, it's like if the song is awesome and all this other stuff is there is great, lyrics can only just add to that, and to me, almost never take away from it, short of disrespect or something like that. But I more mean like to me, it's not as important, whereas other people live for lyrics. You even go so far as there were books you wrote about this stuff where you do dive deep into lyrics and such. So I wanted to touch on this as well. You wrote the 1965 project and the 1968 project, which were this intersection of history and music in that given moment in time. And I just want to make sure people get a little bit of a kind of a backstory on these as well.
Yeah, so a couple things there, and I appreciate that, and I'll double back. I am a lyrics first person. I think it gives me understanding and meaning, but it's also depends. Like I'm not going to dissect and read Clash lyrics. No offense to Clash, but like I know when
they're saying some important stuff, man.
Yeah,
no,
exactly. But like my North Star is Bob Dylan.
Sure.
My Mount Rushmore has Neil Young on it. It has Warren Zevon on it. It has Tom Petty on it. I look at those lyrics. I really understand and try to understand those lyrics. And I love the written word. I write myself, so I gravitate to the lyrics. But in those books, one of the most important facets of those books is that it's not all lyrics. So the books, basically every chapter is a year in those years, 1965 and 68. And each chapter talks about the history, the historical events, political, social, that happened in that month.
Got it.
And then the records released in that month. And then you travel from January to December. But what you see is that a lot of it, the darkness and the turmoil and racial instability and wars and everything, it does matriculate into the lyrics. But if you just look at jazz music alone, for example, you can see a palette change from January to December in 65 and January to December in 68. You see the jazz music actually evolve from straight ahead bop to like Miles Davis in the end of 68 released an album called Miles in the Sky, which is kind of the precursor to Bitches Brew, In a Silent Way and On the Corner, and then off into, Netherland. But, it's not just the lyrics. It's the palette and the conscious of the music got darker and louder and more chaotic as the historical events got darker, louder, and more chaotic. So that's what
fantastic.
That's what those two books are generally about.
Pretty awesome. The decision to pick those particular years, what was the motivation behind that?
So it started with a fascination of 1965. I mean, if you really want to know the main reason why it happened. So I have a bunch of inner circle of just Grateful Dead, kind of just absolute nerdy stuff, like date memorization, song version memorization, just very, very deep nerded stuff. So every year leading up to 2015, for about 12 or 13 years, we would pick a particular tour, usually an anniversary tour. Like in 2014, we did the summer 74 tour, right? And we listened to every single show from the summer of 74, and we banter about it and just get nerdy on versions and tone and all sorts of weird stuff. So then we got to 2015, and my main buddy in Manhattan said, well, we're not doing, I guess we're not going to do a project this year, right? Because 65 Grateful Dead is almost non-existent. Then you flash forward to 75. That was when they took the break. They did one from the vault, but there's barely any shows. And then you go to 85, and 85 is kind of like a weird year. It's right pre-coma. It's just kind of very choppy and not a lot there. And then 95 was the
over.
End. So it was like, what are we doing? And so what I did is I was like, well, I guess we're not doing Grateful Dead. So I kind of was like, well, maybe I'll just look at some of the records released, in 1965, because we were approaching the 50th year of that year.
Sure.
And then I went to Wikipedia and I just started looking at all the albums. Like, what is going on? Like,
right.
Can you imagine being a kid, a teenager or something? And just like every month, these records are coming out, the Zappa stuff, the Beatles stuff, the Dylan stuff. And I started thinking like, well, what was going on? And when I dug into it, very surface, the end of 64, no troops in Vietnam, very peaceful, almost resembling the 50s.
Right.
Yeah.
And then flash forward at the end of 65, it was pretty much a full-scale conflict. There was race riots, there was anti-Vietnam, there was a lot going on. So I just kind of said to myself, like, what the heck happened in those 12 months? And then dove into some LBJ speeches and various aspects. And I got convinced, and I'm still convinced, that the historical events and the political events that were transpiring infected, in a good way, I would say, the music being created, and took it from the Beatles. Just as an example, the Beatles would release I Want to Hold Your Hand, which you guys, Dan, you could probably play that, but it's very chirpy. It's very young, very simple, and very adolescent. And then at the end of 65, they released Rubber Soul, and was it Rubber Soul or Revolver? Now I'm forgetting. But and it had Tomorrow Never Knows was the last track, which is one of their most psychedelic tracks. So kind of got thinking like, what happened to them? Well, they were influenced by the politics, and then I'll wrap this up. But then the 68 book is interesting because it does the same thing, and the political events are more, I would say, more dramatic. Their MLK was assassinated, RFK assassinated, the riots at the convention in Chicago. But I think what you see in 68 is that the effect becomes circular. So the political instability is affecting the music, but then the musicians have finally got this platform to recycle it and kind of influence the kids of that generation. So like the 5 and the Stones and Sympathy for the Devil, they're kind of almost inciting and empowering the social construct to kind of rise up. So it becomes a little bit more circular, which I would suggest is what we have now, where history influences the music, but then the music likewise influences our behavior.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think I see that more in the rise now of queer artists and women artists and all that for decades being either shunted aside into its own genre or just simply not allowed any access to the mainstream mic. And so you have more and more of that now. It's influencing the kids, the younger generations, even going back several years to now. They're like, well, I grew up listening to this. Why isn't this given, equal footing at the table and stuff like that? So you get the rise of these, of female pop stars and queer pop stars and all that. And yeah, and I think it's both. The artists were there, but then the kids had kind of come up on it anyway, so they're like ready to embrace all of it. And the rest of the old folks are sitting there scratching their heads, which is not dissimilar to what it was in the 60s, with everyone scratching their heads about the politics and drug use and permissive, sexuality and culture and things like that.
Yeah, and one thing that's super interesting is the timing when I dug into it, because I thought what I would find is that in the 60s, the reaction time to certain political events and cultural events would be slower, because now, you can just get a song out, probably in a matter of a day or something like that.
That's true. Yeah.
But actually, the big artists, the reaction time from when they make an album to when it goes through promotion and distribution and all these deals is kind of longer now than it was. So you can see in these books how something will happen, Selma will happen, and then literally 30 days later, there's a song out, Harry Belafonte or whatever will have a song out about it. It can get there so quickly, like the Kent State shoot in 1970. Neil wrote that song right away. CSNY got it out. It was like out in like less than a month. So now there's just a little bit more time that passes. So the reaction time now is actually longer than it was 50 years ago.
Oh, that's wild.
Which I think is fascinating.
But I mean, what a fascinating topic, and amazing the amount of research and connections and analysis that you put into it all. So these are great reads. I mean, they would make amazing podcast episodes. Not that you have necessarily any free time on your hands, because you also do this Philly Music Fest. So let's move over to that. But we'll click link to the books available out there, so people can check those out. I'm sure there'll be tons of people who'll be interested in reading those. But so amidst all of this, again, being a CPA, then a lawyer, you were going to law school while you were working full time. Through all of that, you're also an accomplished author on books like this. And then just along the way, obviously born, raised Philadelphia, you're super supportive of that whole community. And you come up with this idea to start to develop a Philly Music Fest. And it has grown, obviously. But let's talk about those early days. You and your wife, Jenn, you are the only two people who work on this. So it is a nonprofit venture, so that more money can go to the artists and go to the venues and to the other organizations that benefit from the revenue generated. But let's go back to the beginning. How does the idea come up, and who do you maybe take those first steps with?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, and I think I've landed on what happened, but I will tell you it's not exactly linear and clear to me. I think it's probably, now that I went on that tangent a couple minutes ago, it's probably clear to your audience that I have a bit of an obsessive compulsive situation. I latch into things and I just do them to the fullest extent. I did that with professional stuff, and when I went back to law school, committed to doing law school at night and on the weekends, and got a job at a big firm that I've been at for 20 years. So I get very obsessive about certain ideas. So one of the ideas that I got obsessed with after the 65 book, before the 68 book, was through my legal career, I started to do a little bit of work for music producers and festival owners. The most important relationship that I had in doing that was representing the executive producer of the Newport Folk Festival and Jazz Festival, Jay Sweet. And Jay had just taken over the Newport Folk Festival from George Wein, legendary George Wein. Started the festival in '59, started New Orleans Jazz Festival, just literally the godfather of the festival industry in the United States. So Jay was just taking that over and almost rebirthing that festival to make it younger, honestly. And it wasn't a nonprofit. It was a for-profit festival owned by George. And looking back on it, I was helping Jay turn it into a nonprofit in my professional career. So that had two impacts on me. One was taking a look at my own city, where I had been born and raised and lived my whole life, went to Penn State and went to Temple. So I haven't ventured too far outside of Commonwealth lines. But I wondered, why do we not have a dominant proper festival? XPN is probably the closest that we have, notwithstanding that it's in Camden. It's still very much a Philly festival. However, it is quite genre focused, right? And then we had Made in America for a while, but that is no longer. Firefly in Delaware is no longer. So we've had sporadically some semblance of a music festival, but for the fifth largest economic market in the country to not have, a proper Austin City Limits or Lollapalooza or Boston Calling or Governor's Ball, or then not even to mention out west, they have tons of them. But so I modeled it out at the Man of what a 3-day festival would look like at the Man. And that's before they started activating the parking lot with the Roots Picnic. It's going to be the Skyline and the main stage. And what I quickly found is what I ended up learning that my friend Jay Sweet has found, is that it's very hard to make money with a music festival unless you are not paying large corporate conglomerates or governments, right? Sure. And the only way to not pay large corporate conglomerates and governments is if it's the festival structured as a 501c3 nonprofit. So I was simultaneously helping Newport through that structure, and also looking at my own city and wondering why we don't have a festival. So I kind of changed the spreadsheet, if you will, from a for-profit festival at the Man to something that is smaller. I didn't want to bite off too much. Let's start it small. Let's beta test this. This is what my successful clients would do in business. They would beta test this. They would dial it in and get it right. And then over the course of several years of growth, it will amount to whatever the vision is. So that's kind of how we arrived at Philly Music Fest. I took it from the Man. I called Hal Reel, who owns World Cafe Live, told him about this crazy idea. He said, sure, we do concerts here all the time. You'll have a concert. I said, well, this is going to be a little different. It's going to be a festival. I'm going to utilize both of your stages, which, by the way, before non-com was usually utilizing both of the stages. I utilized both of the stages, kind of build an indoor festival, and it's going to be only bands from Philly. And at that point, Hal, got it. Wait a second. It's only bands from Philly? I said, yeah, it's going to be only bands from Philly. So this is the vision. It's going to be Philly bands, Philly venues. We're going to donate the profits to charity. And the reaction I got, Phil, was thumbs up from everyone. But most of the comments I got, at least originally, are like, yeah, it'll be cool for a couple years, but like once you run out of bands, I mean, when you run out of bands, your festival's done. And
that's why I asked. That's exactly why I asked Dan to be the guest co-host today, because same concept there. Like, people were probably saying this to you, Dan. Like, that's a nice concept. But what are you going to do when you run out?
I don't know if this occurred to you, Greg. It never occurred to me that I would run out of anything in terms of that. I thought I might run out of time, run out of my own patience or resources. No, but like the idea of like, well, one day there's not going to be any more bands to call. I'm like, that is impossible.
Right.
And
that's
even
the least of our problems.
Oh, no. And in 2017 is the first year of the fest. Am I correct?
Correct. 2017.
Yeah. So 2017, let's make this about me for a second. In 2017, I'm 3 years into this show and like really starting to figure out what this show is, what 25 o'clock is about, and really starting to open myself up to pockets of the community. I don't like the term scene, but I like the term community. Pockets of the community that I was completely ignorant about, and just filling my brain up with it, and just having people on, sight unseen. Some friend of friend says, oh yeah, talk to this guy. I'm like, cool. Don't know what they do. Don't know who they are, but let's get him in here. And it seems like that was sort of the approach for the first couple of years of the fest, where you're just like, I like some bands, but I'm just one guy. Or like you and Jenn like some bands, but you're just two people. And you just start turning around to the people in the community being like, I don't know who's cool.
Yeah, I try not to make it from a booking standpoint. I mean, that first year was 2 nights at World Cafe Live. So, it had a little bit of a festival vibe to it because it was 2 nights and 2 stages. But I really try hard to make the booking not a reflection of my own taste. It's very, very important. We have this saying, which will be on a t-shirt this year, because we were asked in our DMs to put it on a t-shirt. So it's going on t-shirt. You better buy them. But it says our genre is Philly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's really important to us because we don't have a music genre specific festival. We weirdly have a geographic genre festival, which means, Dan, that we can just, if it's happening in the streets or in our city, it's eligible for Philly Music Fest. Now, I will say year one, I nerded out and picked kind of my 2 favorite Philly bands of that time because, I didn't even know if we were going to have a year 2. So we had Cayetana opened night 1 or closed night 1, and Strand of Oaks closed night 2. But then throughout those nights, there was still jazz, there was still some bluegrass, there was still Americana, folk, there was some hardcore punk. So it's just the booking is really what's happening in our city. And that's really important when you look at this year, because you'll see hip hop, you'll see jazz, you'll see country, you'll see folk, you'll see singer songwriter and punk. So it's all kind of mashed up as well. We don't do those lineups where it's like mini pop punk band, emerging pop punk band, the Menzingers. Like we don't do that. We do, jazz, singer songwriter, the Menzingers.
I'm going to bring up the site because it's probably a good reference point for kind of a bunch of the stuff we're talking about here. So this is the main homepage, and this has this year's lineup. So you were just about to kind of touch on some of that. What a great lineup if you want to speak to the various different elements of this.
Yeah, so I was mentioning this to someone before, and it really kind of is illuminating for me, but I'm not going to change it. That we used to do, if you look at the poster from night one, from year
here,
one,
I can do that. Hang on, I'll just move over here.
Well, but basically it was like all, yeah, you got it there. Good work. But all, if 2017, if you look at that one right there with the space person,
right?
I was trying so hard to make them all the same font size, and like I tried all the way down to the bottom. But then you see we've kind of adopted the headliners in big font and support in smaller font, which I guess is necessary, but it's bothersome a little bit to me because I would really like some democracy in the fonts.
No, it's true. It's true. I get you.
But like you got to sell tickets, and like Kurt Weill's not going to be in the same font as Mustafa. Notwithstanding that Mustafa's towers over Kurt Weill physically.
He literally towers over him.
Towers over. He's very large,
tall,
but very sweet guy, but large man. But the point is, I want people to come out for these bands, these emerging bands, because my thesis is if you come out to a couple Philly Music Fest shows each year, you're going to have seen bands that are opening and smaller. You're going to see them, and in 3 years from now, you're going to be like, whoa, I actually saw them upstairs at World Cafe Live. That's kind of what you see here with our alumni, which is about 140 bands.
Yeah, that's what I'm scrolling through now for people.
At this point, they've probably all been on 25 o'clock at some point. So
you know what I found really fascinating?
Many of them,
is you don't have anything that goes after S. So Slow-Mo Sapiens, alphabetically, was last. And now, but this year you have Waxahachie, so you're going to break that.
True? Wow, that's
Isn't that funny? Because also I thought about it and I was like, oh, well, maybe they didn't put the. You also, I don't think, ever had somebody who had the in their name.
Got the Tisberries this year.
Right, but that's the thing is you're breaking two molds of very just silly things. But
if we want to get into stats, and I know we're all obsessed with stats here, so like there you are. What I love is that like you guys have always been really good about this in the 8 or so years of existing. The very few repeats, and the fun thing is that like at some point you will repeat because some people are just still around. The same reason on my show, while I have people on more than once. What I love is that we're going to see Hurry on night one at Ardmore Music Hall, and I saw them upstairs at World Cafe, and that was 2018, I believe.
Yep, it was. And our repeats have been. I think we've only had 7 repeats in 8 years now, and some of them are intentional. Like Slaughter Beach Dog is a repeat. They played 2017 upstairs as well, very small after Modern Baseball broke up, and now they're coming back as a headliner. Low Cut Connie was a repeat because Adam kind of exploded, and we put them back on. Certain bands just kind of, we listened to the fans, and there was one year where we had Secret American played 2 years in a row, or something like that. Ceramic Animal, I think, is another one that has played twice. So it's very, very unusual, but it's mostly when a band kind of rises from support to either direct support or
headliner,
And we don't want to say, well, Matt from Hurry, you played in 2018, you're done. It's like, no, he's putting out great music. We're happy to refresh it, but
on this point,
for the most part, it's going to be evergreen.
I'm actually wearing my Philly Music Fest 2019 shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
And it was because I'm a huge Ceramic Animal fan. In fact, they're right here, this is a picture from Music Fest when they performed. But that's what drew me down. It was at Milk Boy. and I wanted to see Ceramic Animal. I had become familiar with 16 Jackies, and I wanted to see them again. And then Secret American, who I had never seen before, was one of those three performed that night, and I became a huge Secret American fan off of that night. So to prove your point, and also how cool these logos are, let's talk about that for a second. Like all of the design is incredible. So if you could go into maybe who the graphic artist is or any of that stuff, because it's phenomenal year after year.
I would love to. I mean, I will say that, you said before that it's just Jenn and I that do Philly Music Fest. We don't have a payroll at all. Jenn and I are obviously not on payroll, and we don't have any kind of employees that work for us. But to say that Philly Music Fest is just us would be an understatement. I mean, people like Dan has been an ambassador for a while. Phil, you've obviously been coming out to the shows. And Hannah from Avenue West, Hannah Westerman, is very important to the vision. We try to keep costs as lean as possible at Philly Music Fest. We really need people to buy the merch because that's how we get money to the charities as well. So please buy the merch. But one of our bigger costs is this rebranding every year. But I'm obsessed with the rebranding every year. I mean, we I guess could have a logo and kind of like a Bonnaroo and just keep doing it every year. But I love kind of coming up with a vision and pitching it to Hannah, and she'll just create something like this year, the hot air balloons. That year in 2019 was that guitar case with all the
with
bands
the stickers
on it. So,
yeah.
We basically start with a color that we haven't used yet, and then we just kind of go from there, and we redo the whole website. We do all of the rebranding, and I think it's a cool thing. I think a lot of people, argue is probably too strong of a word, but debate which one they like best. Some people love the woman from 2018 graphic, and some people love the flower, the weird mannequin pussy type daisies that
from
we had from 2022. So it's a really important part.
In addition to the fun debate around which is the coolest logo, it also, I think, helps, again, back to sound amplifying memory. This does too, where it's like you will immediately remember who you saw that year when you see the logo and think about those venues and that lineup. Like, it's just one of those things that I think even helps put you in that year. Like, oh, that was 2018. We did this beforehand, ate this, whatever. Like, you're going to connect to all these memories. And if it was the same look every year, that is an element that would be lost from that ability to recall.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I will say that one other thing, and I don't want to prompt you to go down the Inside Hustle channel, because I think we'll get to it whenever you want to get to it. But
this is a good time for it.
Yeah, one of the most important things that we're doing is not only keeping Philly Music Fest as the shows and the donation to music education. Like, the way I view the music community, Dan, to use your word, is a much, much larger picture. And one of the things when we look at our economic impact of Philly Music Fest, we donate $100,000 to music education at each of the last 3 years.
Yes.
But we really view it much bigger. We view that we're getting bands paid, we're getting the venues are making money, and we're donating to music education. But then if you think even bigger than that, you're having artists like Hannah design and get paid. You're having Fireball Printing and with the other print shops that we use, they're benefiting from it. Record stores are benefiting from giveaways and traffic. XPN, it's much larger footprint. So it's really important for us to kind of mobilize Philly Music Fest to be accretive to all of these things that are outside of just the shows.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that just much more specifically so that people definitely hear exactly what you're saying. So there's no payroll for this nonprofit. The festival generates funds through the ticket sales, through the merch sales, and also generous donations from people and organizations. That then allows you to pay the artists properly, let's even say. Like, it's probably more what they should be making versus what they can kind of make if it's, some other type of opportunity. Also, the venues are getting paid. So these are independent venues throughout Philly and suburbs that are trying to do things on their own 2 feet rather than through some sort of a Live Nation or something like that. So that's also important to keep independent. And then lastly, with what's left, you're donating, and you said $100,000 the last 3 years, to 8 core charities that support music education within Philadelphia. And I'll just rattle them off here. Rock to the Future, Live Connections, Settlement Music School, Musicopia, Play on Philly, Girls Rock Philly, Beyond the Bars, and Philly Youth Orchestra. And so what I find brilliant about that is you're almost avoiding the trap of running out, which we know wouldn't happen anyway, but like you're supporting music education and generating a love and just an absolute, zest for music in the youth of Philadelphia, who will be future headliners of this festival.
Yeah, I mean, look, they do such amazing work, those 8 organizations, but they all have operating budgets.
Sure.
And it's thin. And I kind of sat down with them and talked with them, and what do you need? How can we best support you and help you? And it's always just give us more money. But
sure,
the point is,
not a shocker.
They have lease space. Some of them, they have staffing. So what Philly Music Fest is doing is really just a conduit of taking money from generous donors and from ticket buyers that are going to a cool show, and we're recycling that money where we think it's best served, which is with the bands, with the venues, and getting it back to the kids. Yep. But we have it a little bit easier, right? Because we're just putting on this festival once a year and getting them money. Then they do the hard work of operating their organizations all year and trying to make it work. So, I remember, Reef the Lost Cause is playing the festival this year, and he does a ton of work for Beyond the Bars, as do a lot of other musicians. It's an excellent organization. And I remember in year 1, we gave, I think, $5,000 to Beyond the Bars, and I was catching up with them. And at that point, it was like 10%, I think, of their entire. I think it was 10% of their entire budget for the year. So that a little bit of cash makes a big impact for these organizations. And I would also say, Phil, in year 1, back at World Cafe in 2017, 2 shows. We got the bands paid properly, we got the venue paid, and then we had $15,000 left over. Sure. And we donated $15,000. So now, flash forward, we're getting a lot more musicians paid. We're getting a lot more venues to have a really nice payday for PMF, and we're donating $100,000. So the expansion has allowed for more profits.
Totally. And and you're not saying this, but I always sometimes just have it in the back of my head that somebody might be saying, oh, I don't have $5,000, $10,000. Like you said, important thing to point out there is every little bit helps. Could be $5, could be $20, could be buying Dan's, music. Like any little bit like that is going to actually just accumulate because of the amount of people who are working together in this way. And tell a friend, just share that with others to say, hey, there's this really cool and important thing going on, and here's ways that we can make a difference. And so,
and what we found is, honestly, people in the music community right now, fans, let's call it fans. The 3 of us are fans.
Sure.
We like to pay for our music, right? But we also do the streaming services and stuff like that. The culture of a fan in music right now, I don't want to digress too much because the 3 of us probably go a half hour on this, but are not used to paying for the music they're listening to.
Right, that's true.
So when I tee up more of a donation specific strategy, there's a post up on our Instagram right now. It went out yesterday, and it was like, you can help, you can do more, $5. Mm-hmm. We don't get a lot of traction with the $5 or $50 donation. The fans that are in our community, they're not used to doing that because the last 10, 15 years, they're not used to paying for things unless they go to a show. So that's why we've backed into this concept of people will pay $50 or $80 or $20 to go to a show. Mm-hmm. So by kind of weaponizing that revenue stream, be like, all right, you go to the show, but we're going to take your money and we're going to do something that you didn't even know we were doing. We were going to get the bands paid, the venues, and then it's not going to a big conglomerate. It's going to music education. So we've kind of figured out the psychology of how to get the money generated.
Sure. Yeah.
But we got to put on a 7-day festival in order to do it.
Sure, exactly.
That's true. Yeah. And it's and this from the back end of just like lights go down, final night. Like this year, final night is at Solar Myth with Marshall Allen and Angelo Outlaw, which is going to be an amazing way to close the festival. And y'all will have a victory drink and maybe the next day sleep a little late. But within a week or two, like you're already like, okay, next year, because of the way that the live concert industry works, where you're putting out offers by late December, early January to bands that you want to play in October, and that's not special to you. Like that's standard.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, offers are out now, to be honest.
Oh, I wouldn't have been surprised if offers were already out right now for next year. Yep.
It's gotten even earlier. We have offers for headliners out on the street right now. And, we get a lot of no's. I will tell you that part of the, one of my confidants of this whole Philly Music Fest has been Bruce Warren at XBN. And he often, he gives me more pep talks than I give him. Let's put it that way. But there's a lot of no's. Playing Philly Music Fest, yes, you do get paid properly, but it's also when you're a big emerging headliner, it might not be the play for you in your hometown. A hometown play is a big deal for these larger bands that can play the Man or can play the Met. So kind of getting them to play the festival is super, super it's difficult, but I will say, turning it positively, if you look back at those posters and you look back at rattling off Waxahachie, Amos Lee, Mountjoy, Mannequin Pussy, Loca Connie, all the way back to Man and Japanese Breakfast. And these are bands, just so everyone knows, that they are playing this festival not out of the goodness of their heart, but they know that they're playing it for a good cause. Yeah. And I'm not saying that necessarily taking a discount, but they're choosing to play this for
to be supportive of the
city. Yeah, they really are, and they should be commended for that. So I'm really appreciative. But it's a grind, and yeah, Dan, there is a little bit of a when you take your last final, and that you have like 2 weeks off, and then you're starting another semester, and it's this sunken feeling. But we look forward to it. It's a grind that we love, and we're going to keep doing it.
Awesome.
Well, what I love too, Greg, and I thought about this today when I knew I was going to talk with you, is that when you and I talked back in 2020, which was, of course, the bizarrest of bizarre years to be having the festival, but you guys pulled it off in the most creative way possible and made that year, that was like more money than you had ever made in previous years for these organizations in a year where everyone needed it so much more than they did before. But I remember I was asking you then, I said, hey, any, dream artists, you'd love to have it on. And I remember you said, like, I think I was wearing my Sheer Mag shirt or something like that. And you said, I'd love to get Sheer Mag on there. That'd be cool. Like, and you said it in sort of this, like, that probably never happened, but hey, I can dream. Right. And here we are, 2024, and Sheer Mag is on the bill.
That's cool. I can definitely picture myself saying that, but there's certain bands that are just the fabric and the ethos of like the indie rock scene in Philly. And I would put Sheer Mag kind of at the top of that list. I never thought we could get Sheer Mag because I didn't think they would just want to play the festival, to be honest with you. There's some bands like We're on Drugs, Dr. Dog that I would love to get, and I'm going to keep trying to get. And if I don't get them, it's probably not because they don't want to play. It's just they're too big or something like that. But Sheer Mag was one where, Dan, I probably said in a way like, well, why are they going to play this Lawyers Festival or something like that? But we've tried really hard, and hopefully the two of you have seen that from coming out. Like, there's no corporate banners at this festival. There's no banners at all, really. No. There's just some Philly Music Fest signage, but not on the stage. We really tried very hard to make the concert experience devoid of kind of the corporate support that we get from donors, and honestly, devoid of the nonprofit aspect. I really believe that when people come to these shows, it's nice that in the back of the mind, they know it's a nonprofit and their money's going somewhere, but I really want it to be about like, they're going to see Waxahachie play Ardmore Music Hall in a really special small show. Like, I want it all about the show. And then on the way out, if they're like, well, that was cool, we also made some money for charity, that's cool. So it's that kind of experience is super important.
Totally.
Well, it gets tricky there too when you start to move into like the nonprofit world and all that, because I know that just from, because I full disclosure, I do work with Rock to the Future pretty often, and I've done work with Girls Rock Philly before, two great organizations. And when any nonprofit, even well funded, like cool on paper nonprofits, are still like piecing it together with tape and glue in the background. So sometimes what we get in this is when something's nonprofit, we sort of allow it to be quote unquote less than in terms of, production level and, all that. But every single Philly Music Fest show I've been here, I think I missed 2017 because I just don't think I knew what was going on. But from 2018 on, I've been at least one night every night. These shows, you could remove your name from it entirely and people would think that like, oh, this is a Bowery Presents or this is a AG Live type of thing. Everything runs exactly like any other night anywhere in a wide array of venues from a small place like Solar Myth all the way up to a, nearly 700 cap room like an Ardmore Music Hall. If you didn't know, nothing would tell you.
Well, part of it is I stumbled into that and I want to hit that really quick. But before, when you said you weren't at 2017, a lot of people were not at 2017. Let me tell you, it was like kind of half full until Strand of Oaks, and I put Strand of Oaks on. They started the show. I have to run a show upstairs at 11:30. I don't know what I was doing. I literally didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to cram as many bands as possible. Yeah. I think it was probably the latest start time ever at World Cafe Live. But anyway, there were a lot of people not there. I just spoke to someone in an interview recently, and they said, well, 2017 was successful. And I was like, actually, I think it was moderately at best successful. And they're like, is that a direct quote? I was like, yeah, that's a direct quote. It was moderately at best successful. Okay. But we learned from it. We learned from it a lot. And I will say I agree with you, Dan. And what I stumbled into is that I had originally thought of a music festival as you build a stage, you build a PA, you build everything, and you have roping and gates and all sorts of things. By doing this at these venues, which again, I did not know at the time, but by doing it in these venues, they do these shows every single night. They are absolute stone cold pros. So I don't need to know anything about, and I know nothing about sound and video and ingress, egress, and ticketing.
Yeah.
We basically have created something where it's a lot easier for us to run it as a very lean operation because the people that run these venues are pros. So we walk in and, they do their thing and we let them do their thing. So it's really important. But if you flash back to the early stages, people that did go to 2017 and 2018, probably even 2019, Phil, we had arts and crafts vendors. We had a beer program where we had a lot of local breweries come in. Sure. We had food. We had a food truck at one point.
Donut wall.
A donut wall. Yeah. Solomonoff and Federal Notice gave us a donut wall. But if you actually look at it, every year it's peeling back something else. It's like peeling it off. And now where we are with 22, 23, 24 is we are really dialed in on the mission of musicians, venues, music education.
Sure.
So other than it just being a show, you going to see your favorite band play a show, the only thing you'll see, is a stage intro from Rock to the Future or from Beyond the Bars or one of our organizations. That's the only tip-off that it's not just a regular Bowery show or Live Nation or AG show. So we take that really seriously. We've stripped back all of that kind of outside noise and really are dialed in on the three missions.
Yeah. Let's get into Inside Hustle because I think that's a music education of sorts that are just taking advantage of the moment, and the networking that's available by just putting everybody in one room. So I'm bringing this up here for this year. When did the first Inside Hustle happen?
So the first Inside Hustle, I think, was 2019.
I was at that one. That was upstairs at World Cafe, right?
Exactly right. I remember you being there. And the vision here is, similar to Philly Music Fest of, hey, we don't have like a proper multi-day music festival in the city where there's emerging artists and things that other cities have. After booking 2017 and 2018, I realized very quickly, just on the business side, not on the music community side, that everyone I was dealing with other than the bands, for the most part, Marley was a manager that was handling the districts and some others, and there was a few others. But for the most part, the PR people, the managers, the agents, the designers, when I would interact for media assets, they're all outside of Philadelphia.
Sure.
So I remember talking with Bruce and Roger at XP. I was like, what's going on? I was like, well, we don't have as much as a music industry in Philly as kind of some of the other music cities. And I kind of was noodling on that for a while. And I kind of came up with this notion that if you look at the whole ecosystem of a music community, the center of it has to be the bands, right? The center has to be the musicians. And then everyone else outside in the spokes is supporting the middle. And it occurred to me that we have as good of a middle as any other city that I can think of in the country, including New York and LA and those cities, because it's really expensive to live in those cities, and there's not a lot of emerging bands. They kind of come to cities like Philadelphia, right? So we have an amazing middle. If we could just figure out how to get a little more spokes around the middle, we could really support and have a thriving music community with labels and studios. And I think we've seen that since 2019 quite a bit. So what Inside Hustle is it's the attempt to populate the spokes around the center.
Yeah. It's really lovely. Like basically, the one thing to point out here that's important is it is free. So you are asked to kind of RSVP and get a ticket, but it costs nothing. And so if you're a musician, you can come to this event, and there's like an hour-long panel that has good topics and facilitation, and then there's Q&A, so you can ask questions there. And then right after that, there's like a 2-hour time frame where there are tables of it could be PR firms, it could be talent buyers, it could be a record label, it's the radio stations. It's all these different elements of where you as a musician can go up to each one of these people and tap into their expertise and get feedback. And then also perhaps you have that as a mentor or a networking, someone who's rooting for you after meeting them. So it's just this wonderful thing that's completely free. And Rec Philly is in a great spot to be able to easily access, even though it's in the downtown area. And it's a great spot. So anyway, I think it's a great event. I've been at, you do it twice a year. And so it's the kind of thing where I get a lot out of it when I go down.
Yeah, we switched it to twice a year, or we added a second one. XPN, I couldn't do this event, honestly, without XPN. They basically took a look at Inside Hustle in 2019, and, in 2020 was an off year. And then in 2021, Bruce and Roger said, "Are you doing that again?" And I said, not reluctantly, but yeah, I'm going to pull it together. It's the Saturday at Philly Music Fest in the afternoon. And they're like, we got it. But we want to do it twice a year. And I'm like, guys, no,
we can barely pull this off once. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, well, we got it. Trust us. They have a machine. They have an infrastructure that can do it. So he really, Bruce in particular, really kind of is the back engine of Inside Hustle. But Phil, before you started coming, Dan, when you came out, and this is another instance of, I don't know how to do this. I'm really just trying things, and I am trying to constantly improve it. In the first 2 years of Inside Hustle, it was 3 panels. And that was it. It was 3 45-minute panels with a little bit of space in between. And what I noticed is that a lot of the community, the musicians and the people, they didn't really ask a lot of questions. It was like pulling teeth to get them to ask questions. These are people that are probably on stage, right? But yet they didn't want to ask a question, but they were besieging the panelists in between the panels. Right. So I kind of said, well, maybe that time is more productive for this community than the panels. In my world as a lawyer, I love the panels because I sit and take notes and I learn. I don't necessarily need to meet the person. I just want the info. But if the focus is on meeting and connecting, maybe we need more of that time. So I switched it to, it's actually not even an hour. It's a 35-minute panel discussion or an interview. This year it'll be Bruce and Devin Gilfillian and Devin's manager. A short little talk, 35, 40 minutes. And then it's going to be 2.5 hours or 2 hours and 15 minutes where you can access everyone that you need. So it's kind of re-envisioned. It is free. You have to RSVP just for safety reasons, but it's on October 26th.
Yeah, it's so cool.
I love the networking aspect of it. It's always been my favorite part. And the first year that you opened it up, I think that was the year that you had it downstairs at World Cafe with the tables. It was like little islands. It felt like a convention floor. If anyone listening has been to those things in any industry, it's very similar. And you might be able to confirm or deny a story I have in my head. I remember being downstairs at World Cafe Live, and on a day like that, man, you are everywhere. You are in 75 places at once, Greg. And you and I passed each other somewhere in there and like kind of gave like a hey. And real quick, I was talking to Sophie Corin. And I turned to you. I said, "Hey, Greg, do you know Sophie Corin?" And you're like, "No." I said, "Sophie, do you know Greg? He organizes the fest. Sophie's a great pianist and singer-songwriter, and I got to go." And you two talked for, I don't know, maybe a couple of minutes. And then the next year she was on the bill. And I was just like, no, I don't think I made that happen. But like, I'm glad that I put them face to face with each other in that moment.
I think you did make that happen. Well, I'm going to give you, there's a contribution factor there. I'm going to give you 70% of the credit to that.
That's fine.
The other 30% goes to the sticker community. And
That's
I'm
right.
very, very fond of the sticker community. So sometimes I'm given a little sticker of a band or something, and I'm like, okay, yeah, there's a sticker. And then like, I don't have a water bottle or a cooler or a car where I put them on, but I do kind of have them. And I remember that day, Dan, after you introduced me, Sophie gave me a sticker. And I just, at the end of the festival, maybe even a couple of weeks after the festival, I just have these stickers. And I'm like, what the? And I was like, I like the branding on it. I was like, what does this sound like? Does this sound like what it looks like? So I always go on Spotify and I just check it out or wherever I'm going. And I remember listening to Sophie. I was like, I love this. This is great. So I got her on the bill the next year, and her backing band was Trap Rabbit, who I already had books. Yeah. So it was just like really. So I do give you 70% of that.
Nice.
And I do welcome the sticker community. We got to prop them up as well.
Shout out to sticker community.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of just in wrapping things up, go back through the lineup here, just because I want to touch on, the various venues and such, and the specific days that maybe certain people are performing. So forgive me as I kind of laundry list these out, but I think it's important. So the first night is October 21st, and that's at Ardmore Music Hall. And that is, like you mentioned, Slaughter Beach Dog making kind of a return here, along with Hurry and Santa Chiara.
Yeah, I will say, if you want some commentary for each,
please do.
This show is important because it's all ages. At a lot of these independent venues, it's very expensive from an insurance perspective to have all ages shows. Sure. So that's why you see like a lot of them, like Johnny Brenda's, they don't have all ages shows. They're 21 plus. This show will be the first all ages show at Ardmore Music Hall. And it's because the wonderful audience of Slaughter Beach Dog happens to be sub 21, a lot of them. So
sure.
We wanted to try to cater to that, and we're gonna kind of have that experience. So that show is all ages. Nice. The other I would say Santa Chiara. If anyone's a Ron Gallo fan, Ron Gallo is Santa Chiara's partner, and if you've never seen Ron play bass,
he's very good.
Come out to that show. We'll be playing.
Real quick to tack onto that show is that Chiara Donzieri, Santa Chiara, is the guest this week on 25 o'clock. I had an amazing conversation with her. I've been a fan of her music. All of us in Philadelphia know who Ron is and have known who Ron is for a long time. The first time I heard Chiara's music, I was like, "Oh my gosh! Like this is outstanding."
That's
so
amazing.
Get there early, everyone,
and tune into Dan's episode this week. October 22nd, still at Ardmore Music Hall. This was fun. Waxahachie was the big name one that was kind of held back. I don't know if that's annually intentional or if it just is because certain things that just happens in the industry.
But the silly music business.
Got it. Okay. So they were. I loved for a while there, especially since there was a band who was the @ sign. For a couple times, I questioned, was TBA an actual band name? Because it said TBA, but I kind of figured no, that's still a headliner. That's neat.
Yeah, I mean that band is really cool. I've been joking that because some people are like, I can't find their music. Like when you go on Instagram to what do you put in @?
Right, you can't do that.
So it's like it's almost like career self-sabotage. But
sure.
I think their music is good enough that it's going to ruin their motive of self-sabotage.
Their potential uphill battle there. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. They are. Their music is good enough to overcome that.
And Waxahachie's amazing. October 23rd, Johnny Brenda's. Here's Sheer Mag, who we were talking about before, and The Outsect.
Yeah, great show. I mean, almost sold out this show at Johnny Brenda's.
Nice.
Sheer Mag loves playing the church. So it'll be really cool to the last couple times I've seen them, they've been at the church, but seeing them at Johnny Brenda's, it's almost like it's like home field advantage, right?
Right.
It's got such a home field advantage vibe to it. I think it's going to be ridiculously cool.
Absolutely. October 24th, World Cafe Live as Cadre Noir, Super Infinity, Cosmic Guilt.
That's going to be outstanding.
That is
Anyone
a great
who's
one.
never seen Cosmic Guilt before, you got to go.
Yeah.
And I saw Cadre Noir play at Fringe Arts not long ago, and I was not familiar with them, and they're a fantastic band.
Yeah, and Super Infinity is Robbie from the Districts.
Cool.
Robbie's this is his solo project that he's getting off the ground. I think he'll do a couple songs acoustic, and then he'll have some bandmates that you might know of if you know Robbie and his music. This is one of my favorite shows every year, the World Cafe Live, because I love programming the two stages. I will say one different thing that we're doing with this show than Dan and Phil have you seen before, and anyone. Usually the headliner goes on last. Marion Hill last year went on last downstairs. This year, Amos is going to do his set, if you look at the set times on the schedule tab.
Got it.
At 8:30 to 10, and then Cosmic Guilt upstairs is going to be 10 to 11. So we kind of switched that up.
Oh, interesting. October 25th, Milk Boy. This is an incredible lineup. Catbite, Reef the Lost Cause, Kuffnots and Christina Lease, and Queasy.
Yep. I mean, every year the Milk Boy people are like, why do you put 4 bands on at our small venue? Have you been there? I said, yeah, I'm there every year, and you guys do such a good job of like tucking all of the equipment,
all the gear
on the. But I don't know why I make it hard on them, but like this show of just indie rock into hip hop into Catbite, which is one of the most fun bands in Philly, is awesome.
And Reef we're talking with him about having him on next week. So that'll be perfectly timed for this as well. Hoping that can fall into place. October 26th, Underground Arts, Devin Gilfillian, Mondo Cosmo, the Tisberries, and Emily Drinker, another amazing one.
Great show. I mean, this one's kind of a co-headliner because Mondo and Devin are just equally kind of breaking out as superstars. Josh of Mondo is coming in from LA, but a local kid. Devin, obviously local, lives in Nashville. So this is going to be awesome.
Yeah. And Tisberries and Emily Drinker are both big on both Dan and my show.
Oh yeah, Tisberries
doesn't get much more local than the Tisberries and Emily Drinker.
Totally.
And I'm excited that both of them are part of it this year.
An absolutely fun vibe this is going to be. And Underground Arts probably has become my favorite venue in Philly.
It's such a fun room. It reminds me of rooms that I used to go to like when I was a teenager, early 20s, those kind of like basement rooms where you would see just like really cool stuff. I love that vibe still exists.
Totally.
Great.
Yeah. And Dan, you touched on this one a little bit already, but October 27th, the closing is at Solar Myth, Marshall Allen, and Angelo Outlaw.
I mean, I'm a huge jazz fan. You said something earlier, Phil, that kind of like music can get you through some times. For me, my comfort music has always been jazz. It's a almost daily listen for me in some form. So I really need and want that to be a part of Philly Music Fest. I love what Ars Nova is doing at Solar Myth. Mark Crispin has been unbelievable. And then, I mean, come on, Marshall Allen, he's literally 100 years old.
He's still kicking. He can still blow. It's amazing. Like
it's unbelievable. And we're going to announce in the next couple of days the musicians that he's playing with. But you basically just come out and it's just a jam session. So I hope we see Marshall for many, many years. But that's going to be a special night.
Absolutely.
Well, Greg, I mean, what an amazing lineup for this year. What an amazing legacy this whole event is leaving, in now, what is 8th year? Is that what that would count out to?
This is, if you're counting that moderately successful first year.
Yes, we do like moderately at best.
8 consecutive years.
Successful.
I mean, like, And that first year, and I always and you and I've talked about this just like personally, where you've told me stories about that first year. And I always think to myself, I'm like, that would have been enough for most people to be like, okay, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. But you guys were like, no,
perseverance.
We're going to do it better next year.
Excellence. I mean,
you can't do things like this as a one-off. Like
we make a mistake every year. If you see me jotting stuff down on my phone, I'm not like on, Instagram or Twitter or something. I'm usually jotting things down in my PMF 25 note on what we can do better. But we make mistakes every single year, and we just kind of keep moving and try to make it better.
Yeah. but it has just such an amazing, positive vibe, influence, and just really setting things up for a great tomorrow as well. So kudos to you and to an amazing effort that you have there, Greg. And good luck. Just simply, I know it's probably in its basically sprint to the end at this point. And thank you so much for taking a moment to speak with us today.
Yeah, no problem. And come out to Inside Hustle. These guys will be at a podcast table.
There's a podcast table this year.
That's true.
There is.
That's a true thing.
It's a true thing, and I think it's an important thing because people need to know how to get in touch with you guys and what it means and the important work that you're doing. So I really appreciate it. It was really an awesome pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Greg.
All right.
Dan. Oh, you're too big.
Oh, yes, I am. Phil.
What an awesome chat.
Fun times. Like
amazing,
I said, it's I met him briefly in 2019, interviewed him in 2020 when it was, when no one knew what the heck was going to happen.
Yeah.
And the fun thing about this music community, I always say, and a fun thing about Greg, is that we may have met as two people from different spokes of that wheel that he spoke of, but over the years, I've got to know each other a little bit and become, I would say he's my friend as much as he is my colleague and contemporary in the Philly music community.
And I would say that's true of the community. There's so much highly approachable, happy to help type people in the community. Philly sometimes, again, probably more from the sports world, but can get this kind of gruff, rough and tumble. And that's part of the ethos. But if anybody needs a help, all you have to do is connect and ask, and people are more than willing to help. Philly's a great community from that regard.
And I don't know too many examples of a festival quite like this in other markets. Now, there are certainly festivals in cities all over this country, and many of them are even nonprofit oriented and do great work and bring in great resources for groups. But Philly Music Fest is wholly unique, and I'm not just saying that because we live here. Yeah. I don't know anywhere else that does this. I don't know of a New York festival that does this.
Not one that's run by, let's even take it out of any given city. I'm not aware of anyone that has a person who was born out of that city's and their love for music that then is dedicated to putting only that city's musicians in that city's independent venues and then supporting that city's music education programs as a result of the revenue generated. So I agree with you that has to be a wholly unique universe right there. And but to recap, go ahead.
And like Greg and I both said, you're never going to run out.
No, exactly. Definitely not.
Of material. And
so if any other city wants to do it, you can do it.
And I think it's amazing. Like you said, he said 7 repeats in 8 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And even that's not a horrible thing. I mean, people especially if there's an evolution or a giant jump in success, then it's totally warranted and people probably want it that way.
Yeah. 8 years in the life of a band. If you are lucky enough to continue being a band, can be a remarkable amount of change. If you look at a band like Catbite that started in 2018, 2019, and they're in Europe right now touring with the Slackers. They did Japan last year.
Mm-hmm.
This, started from this little scrappy ska band that could, and here they are playing all over the world.
Yeah. So just to quickly recap, PhillyMusicFest.com is the site. You can go buy tickets. You can go check out the bands. You can go kind of just get a little bit more flavor for what's going on. So get your tickets. Don't worry if you don't know the band. It's obviously exceptionally curated. So even if you only know one of the couple, you're going to love the whole thing. So go down and check it out. Buy the merch. If you can't make it down for there, you can buy the merch off the site. You can also just make donations. If you're into the Inside Hustle thing, that's free. Just got to RSVP and register. And buy Dan's Want to Play a Song. Get some cool, unique versions of songs, and also be contributing to Philly Music Fest through that as well. Did I miss anything, Dan?
No, I think we got it all. But yeah, and also, when you go to these places, you go to these venues, and they have bar service, and they have people who work there, and sometimes there's food and things like that. Remember to support these venues that these things are being done in, because they don't have to be done the whole ethos of the festivals that they do have to be done in independent venues, but that's a choice, and you have to then stick with that choice. And so the venues do stuff for the fest at discounted rates and cut rates for what they would normally do in the professional world. So I guess I'm saying, show up, buy the tickets, buy the merch, and buy the drinks and buy the food, and tip the people who are taking care of you, because they're all part of, that's a whole other part of the music world right there, the food and drink world as well. So
All right, Phil, let's say goodbye to everybody.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Your Next Favorite Band. We'd like to sincerely thank Greg Seltzer for coming on the show again. Like I mentioned right at the end, he's got to be one of the most busiest times of his life, since this is the kind of like the week before the festival is going to be going on. But not of his life, of his year, because this is the 8th year of this going on. But anyway, busy time. Super appreciate that, and hope that you will check out the site. If you live near Philly, or even just want to simply go and capture some of these unique opportunities to see these musicians play in some of these great independent venues, definitely do it. Highly, highly recommend it. And support this amazing venture that's going on to, again, see these artists get paid well, see these venues continue to remain independent, and then also support those nonprofits that are generating tons of future musicians in the city of Philadelphia. There'll be links in the show notes, tons of them for this week's episode, because we've got so much to point out to you all. But hopefully to make that nice and easy for you to go and check out all these various different things, including the stuff we talked about at the beginning of the episode, like the cool books that Greg wrote and so on. So definitely lots of interesting stuff for you to check out. As always, our hope is to bring you your next favorite band. If you tuned in this week because you kind of already knew about the Philly Music Fest and just kind of wanted to hear more of the history and the backstory, thank you very much. We hope that you liked what you heard and what you saw, and that you might like and subscribe to our show so that we can bring you your next favorite band in a coming week. Like next week when we have on Reef the Lost Cause, who's on the lineup, or Dan's show. Well, go listen to his Santa Chiara episode. But anyway, hope to see you down at Philly Music Fest. PhillyMusicFest.com. Check it out and go see a show.